Follow our live coverage of the coronavirus pandemic here. Washington, COVID, COVID. COVID, 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 COVID. President Trump groused at a rally in North Carolina on Saturday, expressing dismay that the deadly coronavirus pandemic had come to dominate the final days of his struggling re-election campaign. He made up a scenario: a plane goes down, 500 people dead, they don't talk about it. COVID, 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 COVID. But just 7 hours later, the White House made its own COVID headlines when officials acknowledged that another coronavirus outbreak had struck the White House, infecting Vice President Mike Pence's chief of staff and 4 other top aides, and raising new questions about the Trump administration's cavalier approach to the worst health crisis in a century. "We're not going to control the pandemic," Mark Meadows, the White House chief of staff, said on CNN's State of the Union on Sunday morning, essentially offering a verbal shrug in response to any effort to prevent an outbreak in the top echelon of the nation's leaders. "We are going to control the fact that we get vaccines, therapeutics and other mitigations, because it is a contagious virus, just like the flu." Mr. Trump made no reference to the new cases during campaign rallies in New Hampshire and Maine on Sunday. But for voters, the new wave of infections at the White House just over a week before Election Day was a visceral reminder of the president's dismissive and erratic handling of the virus, even in one of the most secure spaces in the country. And it comes just as the United States suffers its third surge in infections across the nation, with a record number of daily new cases on Friday and a death toll that has risen to almost 225,000. Joseph R. Biden Jr., the Democratic presidential nominee, said Sunday that the statement by Mr. Meadows was an acknowledgment of what President Trump's strategy has clearly been from the beginning of this crisis: to wave the white flag of defeat and hope that by ignoring it, the virus would simply go away. It hasn't, and it won't. It's sadly no surprise then that this virus continues to rage unchecked across the country and even in the White House itself, said the former vice president, who has sought to make the administration's handling of the coronavirus the centerpiece of his campaign. From the beginning, Mr. Trump has downplayed the threat of the virus, initially insisting that it would just go away, and failing to ramp up testing that might have helped slow its spread. Mr. Trump clashed with his own scientists, pressuring officials at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to change their restrictive recommendations about how and when to reopen businesses and schools. The president organized his pandemic response around his political ideology, warring with blue state governors while praising the hands-off approach of Republican leaders.